Hope everybody's having a good day. This is April 11th, 2018. Had a couple of dreams that I wanted to share, and you'll see why this thing is recorded in a shade of purple real soon. And we need to remember our first love and thank Jesus Christ for His provision. I say that first. The first dream was this. I dreamed that I was watching another YouTuber, doing weather. And he had the weather models on. It was the screen like where they show the Euro or the GFS, Icon, CMC thing, where it's the white screen and it shows lows and high pressures and the wind things around them and the precipitation. I was watching a video of that, on my phone. Well, there was this low pressure system that I think was in the middle of the country that just really wouldn't get its act together. I mean, it was deep and it was very, very strong, but it just wouldn't really get its act together and turn purple, like it was supposed to do in the dream on YouTube. Well, then it just all of a sudden, did. The low pressure bombed out, and if the low pressure bombs out, that means it drops 24 millibars in 24 hours or more. And it all of a sudden, the low pressure bombed out very quickly, and the isobars became very tightly packed, and it turned very purple and, brilliant in color with very severe and very damaging winds. Like 60 to 70 mile an hour wind. And, the storm was also, very large. It took up like the whole nation's heartland, and then it moved east. I woke up from the first one. The second dream, I dreamed that I was at my mother's former bedroom, and it was nighttime outside, and again, I was watching the weather forecast, that same weather forecast again on YouTube on my phone, and there was this low pressure system, and then the forecaster said in my dream, well, the storm did bomb out with Syria. And I watched the screen turn purple, and this low pressure, suddenly, very rapidly deepened, into this very large, very tight, compact storm, very tightly packed isobars. And the storm knocked out power, in my mother's former bedroom, and power was out for a week or 7 days. And my mother wasn't happy after the third day of this power outage because her lamp, she had to run it on backup power. And then she said, I wish they would get the power back on. Well, she had a king size bed and was in it, and I was sitting on it, on the end, and I kept on watching weather, and it showed the models of this low pressure being already tightly wound up and very strong. And then the model, I was just watching it like track from the west coast, over to the east coast. And when it got about the middle of the country, that thing just exploded in strength and just wound up. And I mean, the isobars got close together is what I seen. And the pressure went way down, and it was like, 9 something. I think it was, and it was way down there. And the low pressure just bombed out into something just crazy, and the forecast turned very purple. And then they said again, well, that storm with Syria sure did intensify suddenly. And I looked at the isobars of the storm and the nation's midsection that went from there to the east coast, and this storm affected Florida all the way to Maine with high winds and severe weather. And the entire eastern 2/3 of the country were affected, by the high winds and all this stuff. So in my mother's room, I remember there was this cat that ran under her bed where it was dark, and it was scared of me. And all throughout this second dream, I dreamed I heard the song by Pink Floyd called Comfortably Numb, while I watched the weather. And a cat running up under, a dark bed, that represents demon spirits. 1 week, represents the tribulation. And, bad weather represents, spiritual circumstances, getting bad. That's what bad weather is. And the storm is coming, and all that stuff. The rest of that dream is straightforward. Well, April 9th, 2018, I had several dreams, and let's just look at those two right quick. I'll have to turn to them. My dreams from April 9th were like this. I dreamed that the next storm, which was a literal storm, watching it again on the models, it wound up, and it formed, further south than like the Dakotas and stuff. Models kept trending further south. So the storm and track from Colorado east to Tennessee, the video started turning like red and purple. And I saw over western Tennessee a low pressure system bombing out and tracking east. And I saw very tightly packed isobars, and instead of hitting the upper Midwest so much in northeast, it hit the central plains and all the way to Tennessee to the mid-Atlantic areas with very high winds. And there were 60 to 70 mile an hour, winds associated with this low pressure in my dream. And I looked, and the forecast video, real red, purple, and blue transitions, and it was the maps, again, like they show the GFS, CMC, Euro models, on every state from Oklahoma to Kansas East to the Mid-Atlantic, was hit. Second dream, April 9th, 2018, second dream. It was just an audible, but I heard this phrase. All it said, and that voice was so loud, it was loud enough it woke me up. And it said this: there's a high risk of a damaging high wind event, and it woke me up. So I laid there, and then I fell back asleep, and I had this third dream. And, I dreamed that I was in Oklahoma where I used to live, and there was a classroom, a place of learning with like 5 to 7 big windows and probably 1 small ones. And the measurements were on the big ones were like 4 foot by 4 foot. And the little one was like 1.5, feet by 2 foot. And there was some class, but I don't know what it was, and weather was sunny. But the windstorm was happening, a synoptic windstorm. And what that weather term means is just the winds that are associated, from the difference between high and low pressure, not associated, with severe thunderstorms. So the synoptic windstorm, was happening, and the pressure gradient was significant, and the sky was cloudless. So in the room, the teacher opened and closed the blinds on just the small, teeny window, but all the big ones left them open. And I think there were 7 of them. So we went outside, and it was late in the afternoon and clear, but the winds were gusting to 60 miles an hour, some up around 70. Very fierce, sudden gusts, with lulls in between. And this one gust came, and it started bending the trees way over. And I just kept watching the trees bending the tops of them further over as this wind got stronger and stronger, And I watched this huge ash tree at 60 to 70 mile an hour gusts bent it over. And then it finally got the top of it bent over so much that it pulled the root up out of the ground. And I watched it just go down and smash through the house that was next door. And my dream fell right in the middle of it, landed on the roof. And I said, oh, oh, oh. And I saw this other green tree, in the yard with leaves on it. And it bent it out straight sideways. And the sky was deep blue, and it was just very, very, very windy. And sudden huge gusts, and this green tree as it bent over, a voice said, "That's some pretty high winds." And the classroom, I never went back in, and I said, I just wish I could watch this. And there were big overhead power lines, but they were way up, way taller than any tree. And that large tree, it just went crashing, right through that house. And, the high winds, trees were just crashing down and crashing through stuff. And that was April 9th. And then I dreamed another dream, April 9th. I dreamed that after the 60 to 70 mile an hour windstorm that kept trending further south on models and blew trees down all over the area from Oklahoma to the mid-Atlantic and some damage in the southeast. And I dreamt that I did have to cut trees out of the way, and there were so many down in the roads everywhere. I think it even down trees and like North Georgia, North Alabama, blew some of the pines down. And many trees were snapped off, and it was just a solid line of tree limbs and cut up trees along the roadsides. And the 60 to 70 mile an hour winds that were with this low pressure, bombing out, further south, trending with the models, the pressure gradient produced the frequent gusts of 60 to 70. And I woke up, and then I had another real brief dream, that same night that it was morning time, and I looked to the east, and the whole entire sky was pink. It was just bizarre, and it was pink. And I'm just saying, all I know is I've dreamed about a bunch of storms and watching models, and there's this low pressure system that just gets really strong. And that's what I keep seeing, and I hope everybody has a good day. And I think it's parabolic, of war coming is what it is. And that's what wind in the Bible represents. And tree damage has to do with people, nations, and cities. That's what tree damage has to do with. And they get blown down, Ezekiel 13 talks about a stormy wind. You know, I think it's Ezekiel 13:11, 13:13. You know, being a stormy wind, and Jeremiah 51:1 said, I'll hit Babylon with a destroying wind, and you know, that was just pretty crazy. And I've had, you know, pretty crazy dreams the last few nights. And, you know, America, you know, as a mother. And, you know, America is Mystery Babylon. And, you know, that's why the black cat, or not black cat, just a cat, ran up under her bed, you know, in the dream, because you know, demon spirits, they don't want to come to light. And you know, the power outage being a week, you know, is referring to the tribulation. You know, I feel heavy conviction on that, and feel that you know, the Syria thing, that just means things are going to escalate. You know, it's pretty straightforward, the interpretation. And I hope everybody has a blessed day. And yeah, these storms were crazy.